Hi, welcome back to the cabin. I'm Glenn.
I'm Maureen.
And today we're going to talk to you about your plans for buying land in unincorporated and unorganized townships.
Since our experiences with land in Ontario, Canada, and we've recently purchased this land here in the unorganized township, that is what we're going to be speaking to you about today. So if you live in places other than Ontario and Canada or somewhere else in the world, we suggest that after getting the information here, review that with your local authorities to make certain that you know exactly what you need to do when you buy in an unincorporated township.
And if you're not looking for land in unincorporated or unorganized townships, can we suggest this playlist up here, the complete playlist to buying land
And finding your dream property.
So maybe we can start off by talking about what an unorganized township is, what an unincorporated municipality is.
An unorganized or an unincorporated township is a geographical township that the landowners, so the property owners, haven't incorporated into a municipality like that has a council and authorities. And typically, as the population grows in an unincorporated area, they may decide once the tax base is large enough to incorporate into a municipality.
You know, when I think of that, I have a little picture in my mind as to, I wonder how all that started. I can imagine a little village that, of 20 or 30 people, and someone said, "We need a sheriff." and the rest of them said, "Yeah, but we can't have a sheriff until we have a mayor. So we need a mayor, right?" And so a mayor and the sheriff, right? So
well, we need a council.
Right, so we need a council and then the rules and everything else. And yeah, there you go. Next thing you know, it's Squirrely doesn't like that idea. Anyway, so that's what an unorganized township is when things become with administration, rules and regulations and that kind of a thing. And it basically, as an area grows and the sparse population becomes more concentrated, that's when it starts to become more attractive to become incorporated and have an infrastructure, services, and that kind of a thing. And yes, there, a lot of the time it is for the better. It depends on what you want.
Oh, it's nice and breezy today, eh?
Yeah,
Oh, it's so
keeps
nice.
the bugs down.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want you to move into the city because the bugs are too bad.
We had a question from one of our viewers asking, now that I've bought a piece of property in an unorganized township, what do I do? I have vacant land. What are the steps I have to take to get my cabin built?
Because usually there's tons of paperwork, permits, things to file for, dollars to cross the counter,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, you can keep your money.
And
a lot of the money for the permits. Basically, for a building, what you want to do is find a contractor that you can trust that will build you a good building if you're not doing it yourself, or learn how to build a building, because there's no building inspector to come and check to tell you if it's done right or not.
Now, some people might be inclined to hire a contractor, some guy with a hammer and a level, thinking that, okay, he's going to save all kinds of money, especially in these times when work is scarce, and then hire a contractor that is going to build a place for you, that kind of thing. If he knows that he's in an unorganized area, it's while he should follow the codes, if there's nobody there to inspect his work, then he could feasibly be cutting some corners and whatnot, and that's not good. Say you go to sell the place 5 years down the road or something like that, and the people come in and they go to have a complete inspection and find out that it's not to code. Well, that could
cause issues further down the road, and we're going to talk about that later. And so it's like, I have a hammer, I'm a contractor. Try and stay away from those guys.
Right. But code is for safety,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
for safety, it's for your own safety, and it's to keep the standards structurally up and
And
yeah.
you're safe, right?
Right.
Now, one thing you can do is that some municipal bylaw officers or building inspectors, they will hire themselves out on the weekends. So they'll go and inspect and let you know if everything's going good. You can do that too if you want.
Right. So now there is a mentality of unorganized areas, unorganized townships, and people think they can just move in. There's no rules. They can live in whatever they want. And for the most part, you can. And that's awesome, because you could live in a trailer or camp all summer long while you're building your cabin. You could build 3 or 4 or 5 cabins if you wanted to, and because there's no regulations to limit you from doing that.
Well, then it comes with the responsibility being on the property owner to make certain that you have yourself covered, that things are done correctly.
Yeah.
Now we're going to talk about what happens in the future down the road. Like, say if the township becomes organized or gets amalgamated, how does this, being unorganized and building a cabin, affect you later down the road? So we'll talk about that later on in the video. You know, the next big thing is what to do with your waste. Like your waste from your toilet, or having an outhouse, or putting a septic in. Now in Ontario, if you're putting a septic in, you require a permit from the Ministry of Environment or from the organization, the area that looks after septics. And then for dumps, for your household waste and all that, is find out where the dump is. Or if there's a dump association, or what you need to do to sign up to take your garbage to the dump.
That would be one of the things that you might want to register for at your local dump. And that way you're disposing of anything that needs to properly be disposed of. You can let them handle it, and for a small fee, it's well worth it.
Oh, it is. Like, ours doesn't cost us much at all, and we just take it to the dump once a week.
It alleviates all the old washers and dryers and stuff from being out on the front porch. Let's go.
Now, speaking of firewood, one of the other things that you want to look into is the fire department, your safety, and the police and the fire and the ambulance. Check to see if there's 911 services in the area. Some unorganized townships don't have 911 service. They have street numbers, but they don't have actually a 911 service that you can call.
For the most part, the 911 emergency service does operate through most of Canada and the U.S. as far as I know, although I think it's a different number in the U.S. But for us, it's 911 here in Ontario. And yeah, just because you have one of those numbers doesn't mean that you're in the actual, the data system, and that it may not service you as far as the emergency calls go. But at least that becomes your address.
Yeah, we have some friends, they live in another unorganized township, and they don't have the 911 emergency system. So on their wall by their door, they have the phone number for the police, the fire, and the ambulance. So it's like the old days where you have to call the whole number, right? And as long as you and your guests know that, everything's fine. It's just a good idea to know whether or not what you can do.
But it is a good idea to have some sort of a number or a pointed address if it isn't an emergency number in the system, just for identification. It's better than telling them to go down the main road, turn left at the gravel road, turn right at the trail, past the big stump of the tree and the big rock there, and that little laneway to the left. Right?
Yeah, to the red bridge. So what my friend did was she called all those numbers, the 3 numbers, fire, ambulance, and police, and she said, hey, I just moved to the area. I don't have an emergency, but what do you need to know so that if I ever call you again, that you know where I am? So they took down all that information, going over the bridge and around the corner into the red bridge and all that stuff. They took all that down. So now they have it in their system.
That's right.
Security is an important factor. Sometimes 2 dogs is better than 1. Someone asked me, do you pay taxes in an unincorporated township? Of course you do. You just don't pay as much. So in unincorporated townships in Ontario, Canada, the taxes are paid to the province of Ontario. Now there's a provincial land tax, and that covers the cost of the forest firefighting, the ambulances, and the police. And then you have roads tax, which pays for the maintenance of the roads. And then there's what is called service board taxes for areas that have a service board. Not all unincorporated townships have a service board, but if the one that you're in does, then usually it includes like a fire department, library, community centers. And so those are the three. They're all collected by the same place, and your realtor or your lawyer should let you know all that information. We'll leave the links down below for where you can look it up if you need to in Ontario. As many of you know, I worked in the assessment division for over 30 years before I retired. And I tell you, through those years, I spoke to thousands of people, and I have some really interesting stories from those conversations, eh? Like, we got a lot of stories.
We got a million of them.
Like, there was one time I went to a man's house and he says, you know, my wife, she comes in every day from swimming in the lake. She hops in the shower to wash off the lake water. And I said, I thought your water comes from the lake. And he says, it does. She hasn't figured it out. One of our viewers wrote in with a comment saying that he was concerned that as people start moving into the rural areas from the city, that the city mentality is going to take over his small community.
I kind of wonder the same thing myself. We've seen a lot of movement in different areas that we've lived in our past decades of moving around the province in different places, and we've seen a lot of people that go into areas that are once wilderness, and then 10 years later you look at the same area and it's full of development and sprawling with almost like little subdivisions, and the lakes are crowded and noisy, and it's the kind of a thing where sometimes people like to escape the city so they can get back to nature. But there's a big difference of escaping the city to escape all the crowds and the hubbub of the city. But it's quite something else to want to get away from the city so that you can embrace nature and to respect it, appreciate it, and share it and conserve and preserve it. There's a big difference between that and moving up from the city and spending, into the pure wilderness, and then spending the next 20 years developing the property into your own mini city, and then when you magnify that times the, thousands of people that are doing that, we wonder what is the impact that it has on the natural habitat, on wildlife, and once that development is there, you'll never, reverse it in any time, in any short amount of time, right? Once that development starts, it'll never be the same. Let's put it that way.
No, when wetlands get filled in, they're never wetlands again. They're damaged, right?
Yes,
all that wildlife,
yeah.
all the flora and fauna that's there is gone. It's
it takes
destroyed.
a million years to develop a wetland, and in 10 short years, it can completely be destroyed with chemicals or bug spray or anything that man-made. It's very sensitive to the environment. So, got to respect it for sure. And we have wetland here. That's why we're so concerned about the wetlands.
Well, I suppose it all is, part of it could be an education for the people who are moving to the city, for the people who are living here and appreciating nature, like living here, I mean, in anywhere where the wilderness, and teach the people who are new from the city to appreciate what's here.
The wetlands, the wetlands aren't just a mosquito-infested place to breed. It's something completely different than that. And once you see the beauty and the role that a wetland plays, for instance, in the ecosystem, then you tend to have a whole new respect for it.
Yeah,
Indeed.
We had a visitor last year from the city, a family friend. And she had never been out to a country area like this, out to the forest. And one day she went for a walk and she came back and she said, Maureen, there's so many little frogs and different types of, she saw salamanders and frogs and so many things. And it opened her eyes so much to the natural beauty that she never saw in the city because it's not there.
Yeah.
One of the threats to unorganized townships is amalgamation. Now someone asked me, well, what's amalgamation? And that's when one or more or two or more townships or municipalities merge together. And right now, as far as our township is concerned, I think we're pretty safe because a lot of the local landowners, we don't want to amalgamate with an organized township.
So basically, amalgamation, you can kind of think of that as akin to one municipality that's already incorporated and has a tax base of people that they supply their services to, want to amalgamate to a neighboring township that is not incorporated, and then they will supply those people with those services in return for our higher taxes. And that's why we don't want to be amalgamated here. We're happy with the services that we don't have, and we have a few services and we're happy with those as well. So yeah, we're happy with that. We would prefer that over having our taxes being raised. So those that look at unincorporated townships, unorganized townships, that's why it's so attractive, because the taxes are lower. You do get less services. So if you're moving from the city up into an unorganized township with no services, please don't go and try to complain and get all the services. You want paved roads and you want water to, water lines and gas lines and all the extra services, garbage pickup to your door and whatnot, because that's just basically you're asking to be incorporated and for your taxes to be raised. You're better off just to go to a municipality where those services already exist.
Absolutely. I
mean, that's our opinion from living here in the unorganized township and knowing the fabric of the community and the way that most people think here. And we are mostly of alike minds, and we don't mind people coming from the city. They're great people too, but we don't need to have the city mentality being brought up and imposed on us who are here because we don't want to have the workings of the city imposed on us.
And Glenn was saying it's our opinion that we don't want that, which is true, but I was speaking to a property owner in another municipality. She was in an unorganized township and they were forced to amalgamate. And I said, what do you get for your tax money now? And she said, well, I pay $700 a year more. I still take my stuff to the same dump and I get all the same services.
Yeah.
So in reality, it does happen. It's not just our opinion.
Right.
And now with amalgamation, that brings us to a term that's called grandfathering. Grandfathering is very important for people who are in unincorporated townships and they are going to be amalgamated with an organized township. The province of Ontario in their Planning Act protect people in unorganized townships by saying that any buildings that we have, whether they're to the building code or not, when the amalgamation occurs, any of the rules, the regulations, the building code cannot apply to the buildings at that time of amalgamation. But now this is the important part. We talked about this earlier, that whatever buildings you build before the amalgamation, once you decide you want to say put an addition on, put a porch on, at that point, that building becomes subject to the building code and to the authorities overseeing the building code. And that's why it's important when you do go into an unorganized township and you build something, make sure it's to the building code, because if there ever is a threat of amalgamation, or if you do get amalgamated, there will be a time, well, that will come back and you will come back to bite you if you take shortcuts.
Right. You go to add on a bedroom or something to an existing building and then find out that it wasn't built to code, and then end up tearing the existing building down because you want the bedroom or need it, right? So yeah.
Well, I talked to a property owner years ago. He had bought a beautiful hunt camp. He just wanted a place to escape the city on the weekends. It had a little hunt camp, about 200 square feet, about the size of our cabin. So he thought, perfect. He decided he'd put a porch on it, called the building inspector because that township had become amalgamated from the time he had bought to the time he wanted to fix up the cabin, and they condemned it and he had to tear it down and build new because he applied for a permit for an addition, that flagged the building inspector to do an inspection, and he said, no, this does not meet any of the building code requirements. So he said he had wished he had never decided to add on that little addition, because if he didn't, he would have been quite happy in his cabin.
Right, right. So grandfathering isn't just about an old guy
No,
that gets his way.
it's not that you can sit on your porch in your rocking chair.
So it is interesting, though, that in an unorganized township, for instance here, if we wanted to, we could build several cabins where that is not normally the case in adjacent townships, and because they are organized and they have restrictions and limitations as to how many buildings, how many cabins you can build, for instance, and all that without having to apply for being a commercial resort or something like that,
Or
and then
whatever.
all the other regulations that come with it. It would just totally be beyond us, beyond our scope to even start to do that if we were in an organized township to do that. So that's the difference there.
Like the property that we used to own, we had thought it would be nice to build a cabin so that when our boys come to visit or we have company, they'd have a nice private place to stay. And I went to the township office and inquired about it, and it was going to require some rezoning for us to do what we wanted to do. And the expense of the rezoning was about the same as building the cabin. So we didn't do it.
So as you look for your piece of land, your dream property, keep your eyes open, and you'll be that much further ahead of the game. Do your research, do your homework, and enjoy the journey. Well, I think we're going to get ready for that fire now that the fire ban is off. We've had some nice rain. And if you've enjoyed the video, give it a big thumbs up, hit the subscribe button if you will, and check out these videos here. And good luck in your journey to buying land and finding your dream property. That's all for this one. I'm Glenn.
I'm Maureen.
Over and out.
Take care.
See you next time.
Their own little private spot. In order to do that and to build what we wanted, okay, that's rainwater. That's rainwater.